Hi besties, welcome back to my channel, or welcome if you are new. My name is Rachel, and today's video is going to be me talking about the 13 or so books that I read in the month of April. April ended up being a pretty good month for me. I had quite a few of my most anticipated releases of the year come out in April. I had a few surprising books, some that were good surprises and some that were bad surprises, but I will say overall I walk away from this month with quite a few 5 stars, and I feel like I just read a lot of amazing books in April. So let's get into it. Here are all of my thoughts on the books that I read in April. Okay, so we are starting very strong. The first 2 books that I read in the month of April were Clockwork Prince and Clockwork Princess. I am just still not over these books. I also can't believe, I feel like I read these so long ago, but that was in April. It's crazy. These books have had such a lasting effect on me. These 2 are the second and third books in the Infernal Devices series, which is part of the Shadowhunters world, written by Cassandra Clare. I did a whole reading vlog for the Infernal Devices trilogy, so I'll keep my thoughts short, but I just have to say Clockwork Prince and Clockwork Princess were incredible. I really loved Clockwork Angel. I think I gave that one 4 stars though, but these 2 books were just extra fantastic, extra wonderful, and particularly Clockwork Princess. This is absolutely a masterpiece. I loved every single second of this book. It was painful and it was beautiful and really just made me feel everything. I really love these characters so much. Will, Tessa, and Jem have a permanent place in my heart. Also, this book has the most wonderful but also horrible epilogue I've ever read. I was crying and happy all at the same time. It was very dramatic. It was very intense. What a way to end a book, Cassandra Clare, honestly. But I loved this. I thought that it was so amazing and truly one of the most emotional reading experiences that I've had this year, and I really enjoyed that. So overall, Clockwork Prince and Clockwork Princess are fantastic, and these 2 books and also Clockwork Angel definitely gave me a new appreciation for Cassandra Clare's writing, so I'm excited to continue on my journey of reading all the Shadowhunters books. But yeah, these 2 are just top tier. So after I finished Clockwork Princess, I needed something a little bit lighter, something to warm my heart a little bit, and I ended up picking up Iced Out by C.E. Ritchie. This is a male enemies to lovers hockey romance, and it was fantastic. I gave this book 4 stars. I had so much fun reading it, and I really loved our 2 main characters. One of them is kind of this golden boy, very friendly, very team captain leader, everyone loves him. And then our other main character is kind of the bad boy, has kind of had a rough upbringing, and these 2 characters have always butt heads, but they end up being on the same hockey team in college, and that ends up being very contentious and very tension-filled at first, but then they end up kind of realizing that they have feelings for each other. I really liked the dynamic of these 2. They were very different people, but I think that they helped each other bring out the good sides of each other. I think that they brought out the best in each other, and I thought that that was really rewarding and sweet to watch. This book was a lot of fun. It was very spicy, and I just really enjoyed these 2 characters. I believe that this is the first book in a kind of companion series that's coming out. I'll definitely want to pick up the next book because I liked this author's writing. I had a really good time with this book, and I thought it was great. All right, the next book that I read in the month of April was An Heir Comes to Rise by Chloe C. Peñaranda. I read this during the 24-hour readathon that I did this month, and this is a new adult fantasy romance that left me feeling very conflicted. I really liked the writing of this book. I liked the general story. It's kind of like a classic fantasy romance setup. Our main character is a human living in this village that has sort of suffered at the hands of the Fae that live nearby. There's kind of this underlying sinister plot going on. There is this, undiscovered magic within our characters, and of course a kind of forbidden enemies to lovers romance. All of that is great. All of that is good. All of that worked for me, and this author's writing, I really liked it. But I do have to say there are several scenes in this book that are pretty much identical to several scenes in Throne of Glass, the first book in the Throne of Glass series, and it got to just be a little bit much for me. I have no problem with inspiration. I think a lot of fantasy romances do sort of end up having similar premises. That is all fine and great, no problems here, but there were very specific things about this book that occurred in Throne of Glass, and I just think I have to dock points for lack of originality. We do have different characters and a different magic system and all of that, but I just felt that it was not different enough. Particularly the way that this book ends is exactly the way that Throne of Glass ends. It was shocking almost. I don't know. I'm mildly curious to see if I continue on with the series. Will it stray from Throne of Glass? Is it just kind of a first book situation and then we sort of do our own thing? But it's hard because I liked the writing. I was into it, but it was just kind of funny and a little bit odd to see how many similarities this had with Throne of Glass. So I feel kind of mixed about it. So I gave this book 3 stars. The next book that I read, part of that 24-hour readathon, was Good Girl, Bad Blood by Holly Jackson. This is the second book in the A Good Girl's Guide to Murder trilogy, and I really liked this one. I gave it 4 stars. I have found this series to be super entertaining and definitely one of my favorite YA mystery thrillers that I have ever read. Our main character is a high school student, and in the first book, there is a girl who goes missing and is presumed dead, and her boyfriend is accused of being the one who did it, but our main character thinks that there's more to the story, so she uses a school project to kind of investigate that, and then it opens up a lot that she was not expecting. And in the second book, we kind of follow somewhat similar events, but we sort of go off into this different direction. I liked it. I think I do still like the first book the best, but I did enjoy this one, and it was a solid installment in the trilogy. Also, just a sneak peek at my May wrap-up, I'm currently listening to the third and final book in this trilogy. It's a time. I have absolutely no idea how I'm gonna rate this book. It's wild. So, more to come on that. All right, and then the next book that I read in the month of April was Lady of Darkness by Melissa K. Rorick. So this is a new adult fantasy romance. It follows an assassin who, in the town that she is living in, a bunch of children, specifically orphan children, start going missing, and she was an orphan child herself, so she definitely feels very connected to this. As she starts investigating this, she ends up meeting this mysterious kind of captain of the guard type of person, and the two of them, you know, kind of work together to see what's going on, but there's a lot more at play. There's kind of this mystery with the monarchy and what their involvement is. We also have Fae lands nearby that sort of might potentially be playing a role, and a whole cast of characters, which I did end up enjoying. I think I gave this book a 3.5-star rating. It was not fantastic. One of my biggest problems with this book is there was just a ton of telling versus showing. I felt like I wanted to see so much more from our characters and with like the plot progression, but this book definitely had moments, I will say. I'm curious to continue on with the series just because the way that book 1 ended, I'm interested to see where that goes. I'm interested to see what more we can get in the series. Also, we do, as I said, kind of have like this full cast of characters, and they're all very different. We have vampires, we have witches, we have fae, and I just think that that could be an interesting thing to explore. This world and this mystery, I think, does have a lot to offer. Just the writing style I'm not obsessed with, but I am kind of curious to see what book 2 has to offer. So this was just like a fine average fantasy romance. All right, another book that I read in the month of April was Blood Mercy by Bella Roth. I absolutely loved this, you guys. I gave this 4 stars, but as it's been sitting with me, I almost want to change it to a 4.5-star rating. I think this book is so solid. I think that this is such a beautifully written epic fantasy romance, and I can't recommend it enough. I thought it was fantastic. So our main characters are Cassia and Leo is a Hesperine, which is kind of like a vampiric type of being, and Cassia is a human. She is the daughter of the king, but she is his illegitimate daughter, so she is not treated well by her dad and pretty much by anyone in the kingdom. When the Hesperine people come to her father's kingdom for kind of like peace talks, treaty talks, Cassia is very curious about these people, and she has kind of like her own secret reason that we don't know yet until way later on in the book, but she definitely has a desire to meet one of the Hesperine. She and Leo kind of end up running into each other in the middle of the forest and start this very sweet, kind of like forbidden friendship to romance. Leo is a fantastic romance hero, and I think definitely unique from a lot of the romance heroes that I read about in fantasy romance. He is definitely more of a cinnamon roll. He's very sweet, and he's kind of more academically inclined, and there's a lot of politics in this book, and he is definitely interested in that and plays a big role in that. So I liked that. I thought it was refreshing from a lot of other fantasy romance that I read. And while the first part of this book did have quite a bit of info dumping, I will say, kind of like classic epic fantasy writing style, I did enjoy it, but I wasn't like super obsessed. I was kind of just absorbing everything I was reading. But I will say the latter half of this book was absolutely fantastic. We turned up the heat on the romance quite a bit in the second half of the book. There was a lot of action, just a lot of crazy things went down, and I'm really excited to continue on with the series. I bought the second book. I'm super excited to pick it up. I actually might end up reading it in May, even though it wasn't on my May TBR, but I gotta get back with Cassia and Leo, especially with how this book ended. I feel like there's going to be very interesting things happening, particularly for Cassia. So I'm excited to kind of watch her and her journey. So I'm very glad that I read this one. Another fantasy romance that I read in the month of April was A Fate of Wrath and Flame by K.A. Tucker. This book is a new adult fantasy romance. It starts off in New York City. Our main character, Romeria, is a very gifted thief. She sort of ends up in a precarious situation where this random woman named Sophie says, hey, I need you to go and steal this like stone from someone, but she ends up getting sent to this elven realm. When she gets there, she quickly realizes that she resembles an elven princess also named Romeria, who recently assassinated the king and queen of this land, and she's also engaged to their son. So this elven prince, when he sees her, he hates her, and Romeria kind of has to play the part in order to survive. So she sort of goes along with what everyone says and tries to find this stone that Sophie wants, but also she's learning so much more about this world, getting to know the elven prince and fighting feelings for him, and discovering a lot about this world and that magic is real and gods are surreal and all of that, and it takes her on quite a journey. I actually liked this book a lot more than I thought I was going to. I don't know why, but I just didn't have the highest hopes for this. I gave it a 3.5-star rating. I liked it. There were a couple things that I think weren't excellent. Some of like the writing things, like technicality stuff, I was a little like about, but I will say overall, I had fun reading this. It's not going to change my life, but it was a good time. And I ended up also picking up the second book in this series because I'm curious to keep going. One of the other things about this book that I was a little bit disappointed with was the romance was not as fantastic as I feel like it could have been. I wish that the tension between Romeria and I think his name is Xander. Yeah, King Xander. I wish that that was like a little bit more, you know, visible at the front of the book. I think that the plot sometimes took over a little bit too much for my liking when I wanted to just see a little bit more tension between these two characters and kind of have that character development and interactions. But I thought that this was fun and I'm excited to see where it goes. So I will definitely keep continuing on with the series, and who knows, maybe I'll get a 4-star out of it. Another book I read in the month of April was the highly anticipated Happy Place by Emily Henry. This is a second chance kind of fake dating romance following two characters who were engaged, but they ended up breaking up but not telling any of their friends, and they end up going on this friend vacation with everyone to this vacation home in Maine that they always go to. And to kind of keep the peace and not ruin the week, they decide to pretend to keep being together and then plan to tell their friends after the week is over. But of course, that ends up being very complicated for them. When this book started out, it did have promise for me. I really liked this setting, this romantic atmospheric writing that Emily Henry has. It's really beautiful. And our main character, Harriet, was someone I could definitely relate to. She's a people pleaser, and I definitely found some relatable quotes in this book, and I really liked her in the beginning. I felt that maybe this book was going to be a bit more of a hit for me, but I do have to say overall, I was left walking away from the book not really feeling a whole lot for it, and I was a little bit disappointed. My main issues with this book was the use of miscommunication. There was miscommunication between Harriet and Wyn and why they broke up and all of that, and I just felt like a lot of their conflicts could have been solved with a simple conversation. And when they had been together for 8 years and we got a lot of flashbacks of their relationship, it seemed like something that maybe they could have worked through. And also because things were so quickly resolved between them, I was just left a little disappointed by that. I didn't feel what I think that I was like meant to feel with that situation, because I just really don't like the miscommunication trope. I think it has to be done so specifically, it has to be written so well, and I just don't think that it really was here. So it just didn't really endear me to Harriet and Wyn very much. There was also a friendship conflict between Cleo, Sabrina, I think is the other friend, and Harriet, who are like the 3 best friends in this book. And also, once again, it was kind of miscommunication. It didn't really feel earned. I kind of just felt like it was random and thrown in, and I don't really think that it did anything for the book for me. I just didn't really feel moved by that either. I also feel like the ending of this book was pretty rushed, and overall this book just kind of fell flat for me. The negatives outweighed the positives, so I ended up giving this book a 2.5-star rating. I'm very disappointed about that. I, you know, have had luck with Emily Henry's books in the past, but this one just didn't really work for me. Okay, so on the other hand, a newly released romance that very much did work for me, that I didn't have a lot of hope for, but oh my god, this book smacked me in the face, is Yours Truly by Abby Jimenez. You guys, this book was so fantastic. I did not plan on picking this book up because I read Part of Your World last fall and I gave it 3 stars. It was just like fine, but I don't know. I felt kind of bored by that book. It just didn't really do anything for me. So I didn't really think I was gonna pick up anything else by this author, but I just saw so many people talking about it. I had friends gushing about it, saying it was so fantastic, and I bought into the hype. I was like, you know what? Let's give Abby another try, and oh my god, I am so glad I did, and I'm terrified to think that there's a version of our universe out there somewhere where I did not pick this book up, because the way this book affected me and has just like permanently tattooed itself on my soul is insane. This book is beautiful and I'm so happy I read it, and it really goes to show, give authors multiple chances, because just because one book doesn't work for you, absolutely there could be another book that they write that really works for you, and that definitely happened with me with Yours Truly. So this book follows 2 doctors, Bree and Jacob, I believe their names are, and they kind of end up having this sort of awkward encounter at the hospital that they work at, and Jacob feels really bad about it, so he ends up writing a letter to Bree being like, hey, I'm really sorry, I was really flustered and I just didn't really handle myself well. And then they kind of start writing notes back and forth to each other, which I thought was so cute, and this starts kind of a nice little friendship between the 2 of them. And due to various circumstances, Jacob ends up needing a fake girlfriend for his brother's wedding, and he enlists Bree to help him do that. The relationship and romance between them I thought was very believable. I felt it was very sweet, and I really, really liked these two. But I think the shining part of this book was the anxiety representation. Jacob has anxiety, and Abby Jimenez did such a good job, and you can tell put so much time and care and energy into accurately depicting what anxiety looks like for some people. I felt so connected to Jacob. I felt so connected to this writing, and I thought that it was beautifully done. This book, I think, just achieved so much. I think it's some of the best mental health representation that I've ever read about. It just like warmed my heart so much to read about this and to read about it from Jacob's perspective. He was such a fun and sweet and great guy to Bree, such a wonderful romance hero, but we also saw this other side of him that very much struggled and navigates the world a little bit differently than Bree does. And another thing that I loved so much was this was never like an issue for Bree or a problem for Bree. It was never a negative in their relationship, and I think that that is so important and so beautiful that she depicted very healthy and positive conversations around mental health. And I think that that's really beautiful. Bree, you know, learned about Jacob's anxiety and she never missed a beat. She just kept rolling with it, was falling in love with him, was being so open and kind and listening to him, learning about him and what was helpful to him, what made him feel good, what didn't make him feel good. And I think that the two of them were just such a beautiful couple. And I cannot say enough good things about how wonderful and touching this book was. I had such a good time. And also along with that, while depicting this mental health and anxiety rep so well, this book was also just like very fun. I really, really liked it. I laughed out loud at certain parts. I really rooted for these two. I just think that this is such a beautiful romance. I have absolutely nothing negative to say about it. It sucked me in immediately and it definitely made me feel things. And I love Bree and Jacob so much. So I'm really, really glad that I read this. I will definitely pick up whatever Abby Jimenez publishes in the future. I hope that I will like it as much as yours truly. All right, so now it is time to talk about Carissa Broadbent's books that I read this month. I read 3 this month. I just finished Slaying the Vampire Conqueror, but that will be on my May wrap up because it went a little bit into May, but I definitely got my fill of Carissa's books and I had a really great time. So let's talk about them. Number 1, I did a reread of The Serpent and the Wings of Night. This is a vampire fantasy romance. It follows a human girl who was raised by vampires and she decides to partake in this very dangerous kind of like fight to the death Hunger Games style tournament where the last person standing ends up getting a wish from the goddess Nyaxia. And our main character Araya really wants to win this so she can kind of win protection in this very dangerous life that she lives. She ends up striking up a very unlikely allyship with a vampire in this competition. His name is Rain. He is fantastic. He deserves all the rights. Ugh, I love Rain so much. This book I absolutely fell in love with last year. It was on my best books of the year. Really, really stuck with me. Such a fantastic fantasy romance. Truly made me fall in love with Carissa. And because the second book in this duet came out this month, I wanted to reread it. I will say one interesting thing about my rereading experience, I listened to the audiobook because the audiobook came out in April. Carissa had like 3,000 releases in April and the audiobook for The Serpent and the Wings of Night was one of them. So I wanted to try it out. I do have to say though, I really did not like the audiobook for this book. My problem was I don't dislike the narrator's voice, but it does not fit the vibe of the book to me at all. It felt like just not a good pair, I think. I just didn't think that she sounded like Araya and Rain, and I know that that's so particular and so subjective, but it just kind of threw me off while I was listening to it. And I did buy this audiobook, so I listened to the whole thing and wanted to give it a fair shot. But yeah, I really did not like the audiobook. I definitely prefer the physical reading experience with this one, which is unfortunate, but not the end of the world. This is still a 5-star. I absolutely love this book. And then I read the novella in the Crowns of Nyaxia series, 6 Scorched Roses. So this book follows a different set of characters, but I believe the timeline is occurring at the same time as the events of The Serpent and the Wings of Night. So this follows Lilith and Vale. Lilith is a girl who lives in this village where everyone is dying, and she is kind of hell-bent and set on finding a cure for the people around her, particularly her sister, who is very, very sick. She ends up going to Vale, who is a vampire. She ends up going to his house and asking for, in exchange for these unique, interesting roses, if she can have 6 vials of his blood, because she's a scientist and she wants to experiment with his blood because she thinks that it might be able to cure the townspeople. He ends up agreeing to it kind of begrudgingly, and the two of them have like 6 meetings, I guess you could say, where these two very opposite people end up falling for each other. This book was absolutely fantastic. I gave it 5 stars. It packed such a punch in less than 200 pages. It's very, very short. I annotated it. I thought that the writing and the quotes were beautiful. I was just so impressed with how much I felt while reading this. Lilith and Vale were such a beautiful couple, and I feel like it was still slow burn enough, even though it was so short. And I really, really liked Lilith and her as a character and her scientific mind. I just really, really liked this. I loved Vale too. He was just just so like broody and mysterious and interesting. He was so good. So I feel like this book had this kind of just like dark romantic feel to it, and it was really fantastic. All right, and then the final book that I read in the month of April was The Ashes and the Star-Cursed King by Carissa Broadbent. This is book 2 in the Crowns of Nyaxia series, but it is the second book and finale of the Nightborn duet. And oh my god, okay, this was my most anticipated read of the year, and it was better than I could have hoped for. I love this book so much. It is 5 stars, but it is also infinity stars. This is, in my opinion, a perfect fantasy romance. This book represents everything that I love about fantasy romance. This book has a fantastic plot, interesting world building. We got so much more history and lore in this book about like the House of Night and the history with them and Vincent and all of those things. Really opened up the world, but also the romance was just like always there and so tension filled and sad and just, oh my gosh, this was such an emotional book. There was a lot of focusing on grief and PTSD and just kind of this back and forth between Aureya and Rain after everything that they went through in The Serpent and the Wings of Night. And I was so happy the entire time I was reading this. I was just like, oh my god, thank you, thank you. My most anticipated read of the year exceeded my expectations. I think that, I mean, The Serpent and the Wings of Night is like amazing and like a perfect book to me. This was even better. The writing was better, the storytelling was better, the world building was better, Aureya and Rain became more rounded out. I loved every single thing about this book. It was amazing. Aureya and Rain are one of my all-time favorite fictional couples ever. Truly, Carissa outdid herself. I loved this so much, and I'm honestly really sad that we are not going to be in Aureya and Rain's POV anymore for the next series. I believe the next duet is going to be the Shadowborn duet, so following the House of Shadow, and you do find out in this book at least who one of the main characters is going to be in the Shadowborn duet, which I'm very excited for. I trust Carissa. I know she will do well, but I'm definitely going to miss Aureya and Rain. This is so stunning. Please read this book. Please read The Serpent and the Wings of Night and Six Scorched Roses, and then this, and then Slaying the Vampire Conqueror, because this series is truly just becoming one of my favorite series of all time, and I love this book with my entire heart. Tattoo it on my body, please. All right, my friends, so that is it. Those are all of the books that I read in the month of April. I would love to hear what was your best book that you read in the month of April. And if you made it to this point in the video and you wanted to let me know, go ahead and leave the rose emoji. Please make sure that if you are not subscribed to my channel yet, that you hit that subscribe button. It really helps me out. We're getting very close to 10K, you guys. That is exciting. But also I'm like so nervous and just, I cannot believe it. What planet are we on? But I'm very excited about it and super grateful. So I would really appreciate that if you are not subscribed already, you subscribe and also like this video. It super helps me out. Please make sure that you're also following my Instagram and my Goodreads. Both are always linked down below. I really appreciate that you watched this video. I hope that you are all having a fantastic day. I love you all so much, and I will catch you guys in the next one.